In this video, we're going to cover Venga instant messaging a little more in depth. So there are a number of different ways to start an instant message in Venga. We can start it from the title menu here, or we can start it from a staff button here, or we can start it from a room button here. Let's take a look first off of sending it from the title menu. So we're going to choose the send a message option. At the very top, we'll see the favorites that we've defined, those people that we instant message most with. Next, we can see we can send to all stations, just those stations that are online, or we can select from a list of stations, and we'll choose that option first. So when we select from a list, we can see our favorites group defined here. We can see the individual staff members here. We'll select Jan as the one person that we're going to talk to. If we wanted to select multiples and have 2, 3, 4 people involved in a conversation, we could do that as well. But for now, we'll just send to Jan. So Jan receives the message. It pops up colored according to her color, and she knows instantly that that is her message. She can reply by clicking the reply arrow or just double clicking on the face of the message. Now, we could have sent that message to Jan too by right clicking on her staff button right here. So we'll do that. Here we can send to her zone, her email, her phone, or her station, which is in op 2. And here we have a second conversation started with Jan. Lastly, if we knew what room Jan was in, and we do, we could send the message directly to that room. So let's do that here. So we'll right click on op 2, choose send a message, and Jan is one of the stations, or the only station signed in to op 2. So that covers the 3 different places that you can start a message from. Now let's go over closing messages. If I want to close a message at my station, I would close it like any normal window, like this. But if I want to close a message at all stations, I can do that with the X in the lower left-hand corner. And that will close that message everywhere. Now let's go over a few of the features that you might use in the Vim window itself. Let's take a look at sending a message with an emoticon. So we're going to send a message to Jan, and we'll just say hi, and we'll send a little smiley with it. When you send a smiley, it automatically sends right after you click the smiley. Jan could respond with one as well. Now let's take a look at this icon here. It says click to work with all stations. What that is a toggle that lets us work with online stations only or all stations, whether they're online or off. I'm going to click the toggle, and that will change our default for how we work with messages. So I'm going to start another message and choose to select from list. Now we'll see everyone who's online and off. So we see everybody that has a blue little computer icon here, they're all online. But we see Peter in the consult room here. His icon is gray. That means he's not online right now. If we wanted to, we could send a message to him, and he would get it the next time that he's online. By default, that setting is on so that we only see those stations that are online. Let's take a look at another option here, and that option is this one, the message security. When we send a message with message security on, you'll see that it shows up on the recipient's screen just all in asterisks, so it masks the message itself. In order to read that message, you have to mouse over the message and click down, and that will reveal the text of the message. Once you click up, the message goes back to hidden. Working our way across the bottom here, we'll see this little link with a 1 by it. If we mouse over it, we see it says thank you, and if we click it, it instantly sends a thank you message. So that link there is called a quick text entry, and we can define those up to 4 of them, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The next option to the left here is clear. This says clear conversation history. When we click this, it just clears all the messages out of this message thread and lets us start new. It doesn't end the message, it just clears it out from our display. Options we'll get into in more detail in a little bit, but this right here, this is our presence indicator. We can right click on it and set our presence, whether we're here, busy, out, and so on, or we can just double click on it and it'll toggle through the various presence settings. Now we've set ourselves busy. If we come over to Jan's workstation here and we go to send a message and we look at select from list, we'll see everyone's presence here, and we'll notice that Dr. Mike's presence is orange or busy. Moving to the top of the screen, we have this little gray orb here. This indicates, or this helps us choose message pinning. So if I had a message here that I wanted to preserve or save for later, I could click that little gray ball and it would turn into a red stick pin. That says save the message, and also every time that Venga starts up, bring this message up with it so I don't forget it. I can click again and that'll turn into a blue stick pin. And the blue stick pin means save the message, just don't pop it up automatically every time I bring up Venga. If I click again, the message turns back to gray, and when I close this message, it'll go away. So let's change the stick pin to blue, close the message, and then retrieve it. We can get to all of our pinned messages, whether they're blue or red, by going into this menu option, and then finding the message that we want to retrieve. And we can just double click on it to open it up. And there's our message. If we want to get rid of it, we just toggle back to gray, close the message out, and it's gone. There's no limit to the number of pinned messages that you can have. Let's send a message to Jan's zone. When we do this, it says up above that we're sending to Jan's zone, and we can see in the right here the number 4 with parentheses around it. That indicates that her zone is consisting of 4 workstations right now, or at least 4 workstations that are online. If we click that number in parentheses, it'll show everyone who's going to receive this message when we send it. So we'll send a message. This is for Jan. And that pops up at all computers defined as Jan's zone. It's important to note too that if you don't define a specific zone, a staff member's zone is every computer. So now someone could respond to Jan. Someone else could respond. And someone else again. If from any of those responses you wanted to start up a conversation with one individual person, you could do that by clicking on their link here, or double clicking on it. So let's say we wanted to talk to Marcia in Op3, not within this conversation thread, but within another. I would double click on Marcia Op3, and that would start a message directly with her. We can also see when somebody starts responding to us, which is kind of nice. So if we're waiting on Marcia's response, and we can see she starts typing, we can see right here that Marcia's typing and responding to us. So we've taken a look at most of the options that you can visually see on the front of the Vim screen. Now let's take a look at the options menu. I'm going to close out of this message, and I'm going to close it out for everyone. And I'm going to start a new message to Jan. And we'll send it just to her station in Op2. So we started this conversation with Jan, and then maybe we decide that, you know what, I'd like to include Marcia in this conversation because she might have some valuable input. So I'm going to choose this menu option, invite another user. I'm going to find Marcia in here, select. And now when I send this, Marcia will get the message as well. So there's Marcia joining the message. And there's Jan. Next, we already looked at this option here where we clicked on it and it showed the participants in the conversation. We can get to that information here as well, show users in conversation. This option, play sound with new messages. You've heard that sound play each time a message pops up in this demo so far. If you uncheck that option just by clicking on it, you won't hear that sound when a new message pops up. That is on by default. So we'll set it back on. Read new messages out loud. This takes your typed in text and converts it into speech. We'll do an example of that here. So we'll set this option on, and from Jan's workstation, we'll send a message to Dr. Mike.
Hello, this is Jen.
Let's go ahead and turn that menu option off. Next, let's take a look at this option, Flash Title Bar with New Messages. The only time this is really important is when this option, Bring to Top on New Messages, is turned off. Otherwise, the message is going to pop to the foreground anyway, so a flashing title bar doesn't matter just so much. But let's turn this off and see how that works. And we'll do the same on Jan's machine to the left. We'll turn that default feature off. So when a message is minimized and you get the message through, now you'll see on Jan's computer here, in the taskbar, we've got the flashing title bar, and that indicates that we have a message waiting for us. Normally, as I said, it would just pop to the foreground, and that's what we would see. Now that was on a Windows XP machine on the left. In the case of a Windows 7 or newer machine on the right, let's see how that looks. That looks a little bit different. You can see the flashing in the taskbar at the bottom here, but it's a little more muted and it's hid behind the Venga icon. So let's turn those options back on and set them back to default. Let's take a look at this option, Auto Close when conversation ends. This is also not a very often turned on feature, but sometimes it's nice. When you're the last one in the conversation, everybody else has left, it will automatically close the window. So I'm going to turn this on here. And we're still in a conversation with Jan and Marcia. So we'll say hi again. And we're going to have Jan leave the conversation. We can see here that Jan has left the conversation. And then we'll have Marcia leave the conversation as well. And now that window on our screen just goes away because we were the last one in the conversations, and it's no good just to talk to yourself. So we'll turn that feature back off and take a look at the next one down the list. Display staff members' zones in tree view. This is also not turned on very often, but if you do, you see we have a new group here called staff member zones. And when we click that, we would have all the defined zones for all staff members. Okay, the next thing we'll take a look at here is the suppress left conversation messages. When we send a message, and we'll just go ahead and send to a bunch of people here. When people start leaving the conversation, we get these messages that say they've left the conversation. And that's fine, it gives us some information. But if you're often sending messages to a lot of people, that can actually get in the way. It can start pushing up the rest of your messages up and out of the way, and you can't read them anymore. So if that's a problem, then go ahead and check the option for suppress left conversation messages, and that will suppress those types of messages. Okay, moving down, there's an option for always on top. If you check this option, this window, the Vim window, will stay on top of all other windows and not go behind them. So again, not a very often used function, but nice when you do need it. So we'll turn a couple of those non-default options back off, and we'll take a look at the next one. Edit quick text entries. We already looked and saw how a quick text entry worked with that thank you message here. That's already defined. We could define another one here. How about no thank you? And maybe one other. Let's say meet me in op, and then we'll leave the rest of it blank, and we're going to check this box that says edit. So now we have 3 defined quick text entries, and we can see those down here. So if I reply with no thank you, we can see that's sent immediately right away without any other interaction. If I click the number 3 here, meet me in op, this gives me a chance to type more information here. So I could say meet me in op 3 and then hit enter, and it would send it. So those are the 2 different ways that you can use quick text entries. Next, we can change the global Vim sound, and by global we mean throughout the whole system. So if we're not happy about the current sound, which is that, we could choose something else, maybe a cowbell. Moving on, we can change the fonts that we use within Vim. So right now, in this Vim screen, you'll notice the font is a little different. We're using Courier, but we could use anything in our list of fonts. So let's change it to Microsoft Sans Serif, and we'll bump it up a little bit to a 12-point font. So now you can see how that changed the look of the message. So if you have a different screen resolution, you can bump up the font to make it look a little bit better. And finally, we can choose to print the conversation. If we've got a conversation that we want to print out on a piece of paper and take with us, we can do that through this option right here. Now let's take a look at assigning messaging groups. We've got a group defined by default, and that is the favorites group. We can add people to our favorites group by just right-clicking on them and saying add to favorites. And if we click the plus button next to favorites, we'll see everyone in here that's a favorite. The advantage of using favorites is that when we go to send a message here, favorites show up at the top of our list. Favorites is a default group, but we can also define our own custom groups, and we can do that by right-clicking and saying create new group. And we'll call this group front area. Now we can see we've got the front area group here, and to add people to it, we'll just right click on them and say add to group front area. Now that group populates. And the advantage of having your own custom groups here is that you can quickly send to multiple people that you have in a group. So I can click front area, and it's automatically going to select the users that are in that group. You might have noticed that Jan has a little arrow on her staff button here, and when we hover over it, we've got a couple of icons that show up. One is an email icon, and the other is a text message icon. If I click this, the text message icon, I'll see at the top the message is addressed to Jan with a T behind it. Text messaging and email is a feature in Venga called external messaging, and you'll have to check your license to see if that's included or not. Both text messaging and email are two-way communication, meaning that someone can reply to that email or text and it will route back to your Venga Instant Messenger. Bear in mind though that these messages route to the outside world, so there's no guarantee that the message will be delivered or returned back. And that wraps up our Venga Instant Messaging in-depth video. Thanks for watching.